Hello, world, and hello, Montana. This is Chris Islip, the Executive Director at the Montana World Affairs Council, welcoming you all to another episode of Connect Montana. Great to have you all join. It has been an incredible week this week. The purpose of this week was to understand a little bit more about the international aspects of the city and community of Missoula. And we've been very lucky to have an extraordinary group of guests on. We had Mayor John Engen. We also had Dr. Udo Flock. Yesterday, we had Fernanda Mina Barato Krum from Imagination Brewing. And today we have another extraordinary, our guest, our final guest for the week. Marja Unkuri-Chaudhry is the Associate Director of Global Engagement Office and Director of Education Abroad and International Partnerships at the University of Montana. She's interested in international education and is committed to the advancement of diversity, inclusion, and protection of international human rights. Born in Finland, she has a JD equivalent degree from the University of Helsinki. As a lawyer in Finland, she represented foreign-born nationals and ethnic minorities. 28 years ago, she and her husband bridged cultural and religious divides and immigrated to the United States. She studied as a Fullbright Scholar at the George Washington University Law School and has extensive experience with refugee and immigrant communities. Marja, I'm so pleased that you could join us. Thank you. Let me just maybe kick off by asking you a little bit about your background, and maybe you can tell the participants a bit about who you are, what you do, what brought you to Missoula, and then we'll move on to your views on the international aspects of our city and community. Over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the program. I'm extremely thrilled and excited to share a little bit of my experience and background with all of you and then answer questions. So let me first start by saying that I think that my interest in international education and commitment to the advancement of the diversity, inclusion, and human rights really comes from my background and experience. And I think it's really important to talk about my personal background, as it's really shaped who I am as a person and how I think it's so important to work in this field. As you mentioned already, I grew up in Finland, so I went through the K through 12 education there, which is one of the best in the world in Finland, actually. By the time I graduated high school, I was already fluent in 4 different languages. You know that in Finland, if you want to come out of the country and work abroad, so you know that you need to study languages. So I was really fortunate to be able to do that. Then after that, I did study for a while at a German institution as well. But then I decided to receive my law degree from Finland. So I went to the law school and then graduated from there and practiced law in Finland. I felt it was very important to advance the human rights law in Finland. It's actually, in Finland, it's part of the national law, so you could actually state the different parts of the Human Rights Convention in Europe in the local courts in Finland. So that was really important. And then, of course, everything changed when I met my husband in Finland. He's actually was born and grew up in East Africa, but his ancestors are from India, Pakistan. So I had already had an interest in doing my graduate degree in the US, and then I applied for the Fullbright Scholarship and was fortunate to receive that. So then, as you mentioned, we bridged the cultural and religious divides and immigrated to United States. And I was fortunate to have a wonderful experience at George Washington University to finish my graduate degree in law. During that time, I worked at the immigration clinic in Washington, D.C., assisting refugees who wanted to apply for asylum in the United States, especially from Ethiopia and Ghana. And I was in contact with the local nonprofits when I was preparing their cases in the immigration clinic. And then After that, we lived in the south for a while in the United States, and then were fortunate enough to move to Montana. And actually, for a native-born Finn, the climate in Montana is beautiful. I still remember first smelling the scent of the pine trees, and I felt okay, I had come home. At that time, I had no idea. I mean, I'd heard about Missoula, but I had no idea what an incredible community it is. And so I'm so happy that we landed here. And both of my daughters actually were born in Finland, but they have grown up here in the US, and really for the most part in Montana. And I think from the perspective of cultural adjustment, it's interesting because as you know, both myself and my husband come from different countries, and then we decided to live in a third country. So that's actually an important piece of this whole talk, is that being able to combine all of the different cultures in the upbringing of our daughters, and our family life has been such an enriching and fulfilling experience for all of us. I mean, it certainly has sometimes posed some challenges, but I think we've been ready for the challenge. And so then when we moved to Missoula, I was fortunate to be hired by the University of Montana, by the then International Programs Office, which is now known as the Global Engagement Office. And I've actually worked and been part of the global engagement at the University of Montana now about 23 years. So it's been a long time. I also have taught courses in international law at the U of M Law School. So that's been a great experience for me as well. I feel that the idea of the protection of the human rights is so embedded in my whole being that I just needed to continue to work on that. And also, one of the things I'll talk about a little bit later is that I've served as a board member of the South Land in Missoula, as well as the Jeanette Rankin Peace Resource Center, and that have been really important parts of my the experience of my life in Missoula, in again working in the field that I love so much. And then let me talk a little bit about my professional life and my work responsibilities at the University of Montana, because that's, again, I think, a big foundation for this talk. So I'm responsible for sending U of M students abroad and receiving exchange students to University of Montana. Also, I'm responsible for the University of Montana's agreements with foreign institutions. We have about 90 agreements with foreign institutions. So we bring both students and faculty to Missoula through those agreements and send our students and faculty abroad. And I felt that my background in coming first to the United States as an international student at the graduate level really gave me a good understanding of what students are going through when they either go abroad or when they come when they come here, and that has assisted greatly in my work. And also, one of the things that I'm really proud is that what I've developed at University of Montana is a one-credit course for students who that they are required to take prior to going abroad. And what I felt always that it's such an important thing for our students to understand the world and understand that the cultures and the history of the countries that they are going to, and that really enriches their experience greatly. And therefore, we do have that course for them that we offer. And then I think that I'm also proud that for a mid-sized university, we have been able to send and increase the number of students we send abroad. Like even we just finished a survey for the open doors. And so we did send a total of about 500 students abroad on either study abroad, internship abroad, civic engagement abroad. And I think that that's extremely important, and I'm quite proud of that. And then I wanted to say a few things and a few points about the international aspects and why it's so important that we on the campus of University of Montana really think about that and advance that. I think that University of Montana has a very important role in advancing the international aspects of Missoula. First of all, the Global Engagement Office, we are involved and support and many programs that assist that, such as the Missoula International Friendship Program that connects an international student with the community member. And that's been a really successful program, and it has definitely assisted the students a great deal. And then we have the global partners that we actually connect an incoming international student with the local student, so they get to meet and to share their experiences, and that also helps our students a great deal. And then, of course, some of the Missoula staples, like the international, formerly known as the International Festival at the University of Montana that takes place every year. That's such an important aspect of bridging the campus and the community. And we've had so many community groups that do international work that take part in that. But I think it's really important that we have these organizations, that we create programs that help to connect the international aspects of the campus and the community. Sometimes just by the virtue of, of the campus existing, it's not enough. So we do need to have those programs in place, and they really facilitate that process. And really, I think that all of this matters greatly. I think that Missoula is an incredible place, and it has really been a home for me as a global citizen. I really do consider sometimes myself hanging somewhere in the middle of the ocean, because I still, I'm a dual citizen. I'm still very strongly feel like an European, or like in Europe, the national cultures are still very distinct and strong, but there's still the European identity that exists. At the same time, I'm also American, and I feel very, very much part of this community, this country, and I think that all of this has enriched my life greatly. So I think that that's going to be my introduction. I'm ready for all of your questions.
Marja, thank you so much for that introduction. Everybody who's come on this week has, of course, mentioned the university as a very important part of our community, particularly with regard to the international aspects of the city and community. Now, it's very interesting to hear you describe a little bit more about the programs and your part in those programs. Could I ask you, Marja, just to have you say a few more comments on why those programs matter to the community? I mean, it's clear why it may matter to a student or to the university, but when the university engages in international programs, has exchanges, not only students, but educators and lecturers and so on, why does that matter to our community?
I think fundamentally, like, it kind of relates to everything what I said. I think that the intercultural dialogue strengthens the world peace, and I think that everybody, every unit, every human being who has those experiences and who can advance that has that responsibility. So I think that that's why it's really important for the Missoulians. I think that a lot of Missoulians have a lot of interest in the rest of the world, but in order really to understand the rest of the world, we need knowledge, and universities are the ones that provide the knowledge. I even remember when I was the soft landing board member, one of my fundamental principles was as a board member is to make sure that we would reach out to, especially your university. And what I was advocating is arranging these lectures, like we would involve our faculty members who were very knowledgeable about the countries that the refugees came from, and we would do the presentations on campus. And it's that knowledge, it's the fact that the more we know about each other, the more we understand each other, and the less, so then, that there's less of that unknown that often creates fear and miscommunication. So I think that that's very important.
Uh, Marja, a few questions now coming in from our participants. Based on your lived experience in Missoula, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing our community in its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? And in your opinion, what needs to happen to bring about change?
Um, I think that, well, one of the, from the university perspective, I think that, of course, what we would like to, I mean, of course, with the COVID-19 too, what's happening is that we just are probably not going to be able to send as many students as we would like abroad in the near future. And then also with the international students, with the changes that we've seen in the immigration practices. So we probably are going to be facing the reduced number of international students coming in. So I think it's really important for the university to continue its strong efforts to recruit more international students. But of course, the challenge is also the funding. So some of these programs do require funding. There's going to be the challenge of not having the same funding to be able to develop programs that bring more international students in. And of course, the other thing is too that with those NGOs, like we talked about the soft landing Missoula, and then also the IRC, the International Rescue Committee. So we've already heard from the federal, government that there's been a lot of reductions in the funding of those groups. So that's going to be something that's going to be challenging for Missoula, because if we don't receive more refugees coming in, so that will reduce those international aspects in the community. And so that will be the challenge. So those are those.
Marja, we're very fortunate, I think, to have an expert on international human rights. You've got very, professional, long-term experience in the instruments of international human rights. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a question on that. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, I mean, clearly the Universal Declaration of Human Rights covers all of us, no matter who you are and where you are. Here in Missoula, you did mention it, with regard to refugees and immigrants, but it's not an instrument that only covers, certain groups. It covers all of us. I wonder if you could speak just a bit on human rights and how you would view them being implemented here in Missoula.
It's a little bit hard, but I think that the way you can see the grassroots diplomacy in implementing human rights is how we view internationals coming to our communities, that we recognize everybody having those fundamental rights to be here, to have access to education, to have access to services, and to have access to peace and happiness. I think that the way I see international human rights and what it means to us is just that we recognize those fundamental rights for everybody, and it's not just that it's based on the citizenship of a country, but everybody who is in that country and in the world at large that has those rights. I think that the thing that I want to mention here is my background in working in the European human rights system. That what is the beauty of that it has a lot of enforcement mechanisms tied to that, so you can actually challenge the courts in many of the European countries based on the violation of those European human rights convention articles. And that was incredible opportunity for me as a very young lawyer at that time, pretty inexperienced, to be be able to walk into the courtroom. I remember I was representing a foreigner in the courts, and who had gotten into trouble with the law, but being able to actually state those articles of the convention, that's not the case in the United States. And that's something that I hope in the future that will happen, and that the United States will be part of more of the UN human rights conventions in a way that will enable us to challenge those. But I think that the way I see that in Missoula is what I said earlier, is that it's important for us to recognize that everybody has those fundamental rights and that everybody needs to respect them.
And maybe just your view on are these rights being implemented? Are they being respected broadly, or are there challenges to that? And if so, what are they? What could we do?
Yeah, there are challenges, like not everybody having access to the same services. Are you talking about globally, or are you talking about in Missoula?
Just in Missoula, if you can take that global thinking on international human rights and just your views on ways that we might be aware that the implementation could be improved here by us, by our leaders, by our administration in Missoula.
Yeah, I think that what's just important is that everybody will have the access to the safe housing environment, that everybody has access to education, to healthcare, and to recreation, and to all of those very basic fundamental things that we consider so dear in our lives. And I think that that's often the challenge. But I think that the organizations such as Soft Landing Missoula and the International Rescue Committee does a wonderful job. Like, for example, there are those groups of individuals that help the refugees to resettle in Missoula and help them to set up everything basic that they need to carry on with their lives. The other thing too that's really important is the access to mental health services, because often especially refugees have gone through really traumatic experiences, and they need assistance in going through that. But again, that assistance needs to be based on their terms. Like, we cannot dictate, because again, they're based on their cultural background and their how they grew up. So what they consider as being the challenge might be something very different that we understand. Because I think that that's actually a really important point that I want to make. If I could do, what's really important in the protection of the human rights too, that we understand the cultural implications of those human rights. Universal Declaration, somebody has, everybody needs to have access to the basic, rights, or the basic things in life. At the same time, though, based on your own culture and your background, that might look a little bit different, and there has to be an understanding of that when you work in that field.
Marja, we have time for one last question, I think. Here's from a participant. Have you ever considered initiating the establishment of a sister city from Missoula in Finland? I think this would be amazing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be fantastic. In fact, I'm glad that you asked the question about the sister city, because I know Uda talked on the program about the sister city program with Palmerston North. And so University of Montana, we have 3 partner universities in New Zealand, and one of them is Massey University, that has a campus, one of its 3 campuses in Palmerston North. So what we've had happen in the past is that our students who've gone and studied there, so they've been invited for a tea by the mayor of Palmerston North. And so there's been definitely many connections with our students, with the community. So, and I think that can be strengthened. And as Udo was speaking here, I think that would be fantastic to consider a sister city relations. I'd be very happy to assist with that as well. based on my connections. I have connections with most of the Finnish universities, and of course I'm a graduate of the biggest one, and would love to facilitate that. And I think that that would be a great asset for our students and also for our community. Finland is such a leader in so many areas, like also if you look at arts, culture, architecture, so. And then, of course, K through 12 education. That there are so many things that Finland is such a pioneer. So that would benefit, I think, the Missoula community greatly.
Well, we're very lucky to have the head of Arts Missoula, Tom Benson, on with us. Hi, Tom. Tom, I
Morning.
wonder if you could give us, 30 seconds or so
Sure.
on the Sister City initiative. That's a very interesting connection.
Sure. We, as Udo had mentioned, we have two sister cities, long-running sister cities. The establishment of the whole idea of a sister city, it's an agreement between city governments. So it is something that actually it comes out of the mayor's offices of both cities, but it begins. Often it begins in the community, and in our two sister cities actually began with university exchanges. University exchange back in the early 80s, where Professor Harold Bockemuhl got his master's degree at Massey University and started an exchange that way. And then in the 90s, Professor Jerry Fetz had an exchange with Heidelberg University, and that's how we have our sister city of Neckargemünd, which is a bedroom community of Heidelberg. Mm-hmm. So they began as university exchanges, and then there were student exchanges, and then it sort of spread into the community. So it relies on a lot of human energy to begin with, and then it moves from there to the official government way of doing things. And so they're great ideas, and I think beginning with some. I mean, it's kind of hard to have exchanges now with this current COVID situation, but that's often how they begin, is some kind of an exchange. And we're fortunate in that we have all of our sister cities. There's a strong university connection to begin with. So. Mm-hmm. But to get to an actual sister city phase, it actually needs to then move to the government.
Okay.
Hope that answers that.
Tom, thanks a lot for chiming in. Much appreciated. Marja, over to you for any last words.
Well, what I just would like to say that I will continue to work at the University of Montana in the Global Engagement Office vigorously to advance the international aspects of Missoula, to strengthen the ties between the University of Montana and the Missoula community. I think that we all have, I would like to even make a statement that we all as world citizens have a responsibility to advance those international aspects in our communities. And I think that responsibility is greater for those of us who have international background, who possibly have traveled or who were born abroad and then came to the United States later on. It's so important in especially today's world. I think that the statement I made earlier is that that the intercultural dialogue is a key aspect of strengthening the world peace and equality, and that's where I would like to leave with everybody. And I've been privileged to have that opportunity to work on that in my life and in both my personal and my professional life, and plan to continue that.
Well, thank you for that, Marja, and certainly I hope you continue those very important things, for not just for our city and community, but for our world. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks to everybody else for joining. It's been an incredible week where we learned a lot more about the international aspects of Missoula. I hope you can join next week, because we're going to take the same idea, but we're going to expand it to Montana. I hope to have Dr. Ilse Marie Lee, the Dean of the Honors College at MSU in Bozeman, who's from South Africa. We're also hoping to have Mayor Wilmot Collins, who was born in Liberia, who's the mayor of Helena, and maybe one or two more very interesting Montanans who bring a different kind of perspective on international aspects of our community and our state. So if you missed any of these shows, let me remind you again, they're all on YouTube and Facebook. Go and check them out. Take 25 minutes, learn something today. You'll love it, I'm sure. If you have any thoughts or ideas, send them to me at info@montanaworldaffairs.org. So until I see you again, thanks everybody. Have a good day.